torso twists and spinal rotations. In Big Bear training camp, Gennady Golovkin's mornings start the same way. A mountain run at sunrise, followed immediately by a round of stretches. Abel Sanchez, his longtime coach, made it a rule. Before breakfast, loosen the spine. One of Golovkin's go-to moves is standing with a medicine ball at chest height, rotating side to side in a steady rhythm. The movement wakes up the thoracic spine, the hinge point between the legs and fists, and gets blood flowing into the small stabilizers between the ribs. When this area tightens, power leaks. Hooks feel forced, straights lose snap, and slipping shots becomes harder. That's why Golovkin's rotation work isn't rushed. He'll pair the medicine ball twists with open book stretches lying on his side, or band-resisted turns that cue the obliques to fire while the hips stay anchored. Each drill mimics the way his torso turns mid-punch, making the stretch directly transferable to the ring. In camp, these drills run 30 to 60 seconds per side before gloves go on, and Sanchez swears the effect is visible. Even 2 extra degrees of rotation can turn a shot from grazing to clean. Over years of consistency, it's helped Golovkin keep his trademark ability to deliver full power even in the tight spaces inside an opponent's guard. Hip flexor and quad stretches. In training camp, Manny Pacquiao's morning road work often ends with a walk, but not the casual kind. He'll stride the length of the gym in exaggerated lunges, sometimes adding a torso twist at the bottom. Freddie Roach explains it's about opening the hips so Pacquiao can keep exploding in and out of range, even in round 12. The hip flexors, a group of muscles running from the lower spine into the front of the thigh, drive that forward step. When they tighten, your stride shortens, pivots feel stuck, and explosiveness drops. Dynamic drills come first. Walking lunges wake the hip flexors and quads, while high knee skips add an elastic bounce for sudden bursts forward. In Pacquiao's camp, you'll also see knee-to-chest pulls done in rhythm, a way to prep the hips without tiring the legs. After boxing work, the pace slows. Pacquiao often holds a kneeling lunge for 30 seconds per side, sometimes adding an overhead reach to stretch the quads along with the hip flexors. The gains are measurable. In elite camps, trainers will film a fighter's stride before and after stretching. Pacquiao's been known to add a full inch to his lead step this way, just enough to land the jab without giving an opponent a clean counter. In a sport of inches, that's fight-winning range. Dynamic shoulder mobility drills. Floyd Mayweather wasn't always a stretching devotee, but by the last decade of his career, his warm-ups often started with a resistance band in hand. Before a single punch was thrown, he'd run slow, controlled arcs overhead, pull the band apart until his shoulder blades pinched, then ease it forward again. This wasn't about building strength, it was about freeing the joint so every jab and hook traveled without friction. The shoulder is the most mobile joint in the body, but also one of the easiest to lock up under boxing's repetitive motion. Mayweather's band work targeted the small rotator cuff muscles, infraspinatus, supraspinatus, teres minor, that stabilized the ball and socket during high-speed punches. Other drills in his routine included dislocates, where a band or stick passes overhead from front to back, and lightweight shadowboxing with smooth, extended follow-through. Dynamic mobility drills like these do more than loosen the shoulders. They help maintain guard endurance. A stiff shoulder drops faster, leaving openings. By contrast, a loose, stable joint lets a fighter keep their hands high while throwing combinations without fatigue. Trainers using punch trackers in camp have recorded immediate speed gains after mobility work. Just a few degrees more range can add miles per hour to a jab. For Mayweather, that often meant he landed first and dictated the pace. Hamstring and posterior chain stretches. Midway through a heavy bag session, Anthony Joshua's coaches will sometimes stop the clock. It's not a break, it's a reset. He'll drop the gloves, walk to the open mat, and run through inchworms, toe reaches, and standing hamstring sweeps. For a fighter who generates much of his power from his back leg, the hamstrings, glutes, and lower back, collectively the posterior chain, have to stay loose and ready. These muscles drive the push-off when Joshua steps into a right hand and help stabilize him when he pulls back to avoid a counter. When they tighten, footwork shortens, recovery slows, and balance erodes. Dynamic drills like straight leg kicks, walking toe touches, and banded good mornings prep the tissue for explosive work. Post-session, static stretches, seated forward folds or lying hamstring pulls restore length and prevent next-day stiffness. Joshua's team has even used motion analysis to track changes mid-session. If his rear heel starts lifting too early or his stance narrows, it's often a sign the hamstrings are tightening. A quick bout of active stretching between rounds can bring his stance back to full width, restoring both power and defensive stability. In a long fight, that difference in base can decide whether a missed punch leaves you exposed or ready to counter. Groin and adductor openers. Vasiliy Lomachenko's side steps look effortless, but they're built on hours of adductor work that most fighters skip. Before footwork drills, he'll sink into deep Cossack squats, one leg bent, the other straight, shifting side to side to stretch the groin and inner thigh. His camp treats these openers as essential for cutting sharp angles without strain. The adductors act as both brakes and accelerators. They pull the legs back together after a wide stance and drive the body sideways when it's time to step off the center line. Tightness here makes lateral movement heavy, slows your exit after combinations, and increases the risk of groin pulls, an injury that can sideline a fighter for weeks. Lomachenko's dynamic warm-up also includes side shuffles and wide stance pulses to load and stretch the muscles under movement. After training, static versions, butterfly stretches or wide-legged forward folds, restore length and prevent lingering tightness. In Lomachenko's fight prep, these drills directly protect his style. Without them, the constant pivots and sudden shifts that define his rhythm would grind on stiff tissue, making him half a step slower. In the ring, half a step is the difference between making an opponent miss by inches and getting caught square. Calf and Achilles tendon stretches. By the time Manny Pacquiao fought Oscar De La Hoya, his calves were a weapon, built for endless bounce. But that bounce only lasts if the calves and Achilles tendons stay supple. In camp, Freddie Roach often added extra jump rope rounds, not for conditioning alone, but to keep Pacquiao's lower legs springy. Between rounds, he'd mix in quick calf stretches, pressing one heel to the floor while leaning forward against the ring ropes. The calves and Achilles act like coiled springs, storing and releasing energy with every step. When they tighten, movement flattens, footwork loses its rhythm, and the split-second lift needed to dart in or out disappears. Dynamic drills before training, ankle hops, skipping, and single-leg calf raises prep the tissue for speed. Post-session, bent knee and straight leg calf stretches target both the gastrocnemius and soleus muscles, as well as the tendon itself. Pacquiao's team understood the stakes. In a fight where his in-and-out attacks were his greatest weapon, tight calves could trap him in range. Keeping them loose meant he could still bounce into a jab in the 12th round with the same snap he had in the first, a constant reminder that footwork is built from the ground up. Neck mobility and tension release. In sparring, Oleksandr Usyk's head seems to float just outside the line of fire, rolling and tilting in sync with each incoming shot. That smooth movement starts in his warm-up. Before he throws a punch, Usyk runs through slow neck rolls, controlled side bends, and gentle rotations, ensuring the muscles that hold his head steady are loose and responsive. The neck's small stabilizers work constantly in boxing, keeping the chin tucked, absorbing impacts, and guiding head movement. Over time, tension here can spread into the shoulders and upper back, reducing both defensive reactions and punching form. Dynamic warm-ups might include nodding motions, slow no turns, and partner-resisted pushes to activate the muscles through a full range. Post-training, Usyk often adds static stretches, pulling the head gently toward one shoulder or looking over each shoulder and holding for 20 to 30 seconds. This not only restores mobility, but helps flush out tension from clinches or glancing blows. Usyk's camp treats neck mobility as insurance. A free-moving neck means better vision, quicker slips, and less strain during prolonged exchanges. In a sport where one clean shot can change the fight, the ability to move your head just a few extra inches can be the difference between grazing contact and a decisive blow. Wrist and forearm flexibility drills. When Canelo Álvarez works the heavy bag, the power and precision in each shot start long before the glove lands. In camp, his warm-up often includes slow wrist circles, palm stretches against a wall, and rolling light hand weights in his palms. These drills loosen the joints and activate the small stabilizers in the forearms that control glove position. The wrists are the final link in the chain from foot to fist. If they can't flex and stabilize on impact, punches lose accuracy and the risk of sprains rises. The forearms, packed with tendons and small muscles, also absorb shock during blocking and parrying. Canelo's coach Munir Samoya emphasizes band work and grip exercises to strengthen while keeping mobility, for example, rolling a bar with added weight or squeezing a stress ball through different wrist angles. After high-volume bag work, Canelo often moves into static stretches, gently pulling back on each finger to open the wrist, or placing his palm flat on the floor and leaning forward for a deeper extension. This keeps his hands healthy for the next session. In a fight, it means he can keep his guard firm and his punches crisp, even when fatigue sets in late. Dynamic versus static stretching before training. Before sparring, Terence Crawford flows through a sequence that looks almost like choreography, bouncing lunges, arm swings, light pivots, and torso twists. It's all dynamic movement, designed to warm the muscles and joints without dulling their snap. Crawford has said he never liked traditional stretching until he started incorporating yoga. but his pre-session prep is all about movement, not holds. Dynamic stretching uses motion to gradually expand range of motion while raising heart rate and activating the nervous system. For a boxer, this means leg swings to wake the hips and hamstrings, arm circles for the shoulders, and trunk rotations for the spine, all done in controlled reps. These mimic the positions and speed of fight movements, so the transition into full training is seamless. Static stretching, by contrast, involves holding a position for 20 to 60 seconds. While it's valuable for restoring muscle length and reducing tension, research shows it can temporarily reduce explosive power if done right before high-intensity work. That's why Crawford's camp separates the two completely: dynamic before training to prime the body, static afterward to aid recovery. In his own words, it's about being ready to go and then making sure you're ready to come back tomorrow. Post-fight recovery stretching routines. After the final bell, Dmitry Bivol's work isn't over. Once the gloves come off and the adrenaline begins to fade, his team guides him into a deliberate cool-down. It starts with kneeling hip flexor holds, then seated hamstring stretches, and finally, gentle spinal rotations. The aim isn't to gain flexibility in that moment, it's to help the body shift from fight mode into recovery mode. Post-fight stretching focuses on circulation, relaxation, and reducing residual muscle tension. Holding static positions signals the nervous system to downshift, while improving blood flow to flush out metabolic byproducts from hours of explosive effort. Bivol's camp often works through a full body sequence. Calves and hamstrings first to relieve the legs after constant footwork, hips and groin to open areas tightened by pivots, then shoulders, back, and neck to release the upper body from the strain of clinches. Even in the locker room, Bivol makes time for these stretches. His coaches view them as an investment, preventing stiffness that could carry into the next week of training and keeping his body in a state where it can handle another camp. As Bivol puts it, this is how you make sure your body gives you another 10 years. PNF stretching for boxers. In Oleksandr Usyk's camp, partner-assisted stretching is a regular fixture, but it's not just passive holds. Usyk will move into a stretch, push against his partner's resistance for a few seconds, then relax as the partner eases him deeper into the range. This method, known as PNF stretching, combines muscle contraction with assisted lengthening to produce rapid gains in flexibility. The sequence is simple but highly effective. Stretch, resist, relax, and stretch further. For boxers, it's most often applied to the hips, hamstrings, and shoulders, areas where even small improvements can change performance. A looser hip means cleaner pivots. An extra few degrees in the shoulder joint can add reach to a jab, or make a defensive roll smoother. Usyk's team typically uses PNF after heavy training or on dedicated recovery days. Doing it before sparring isn't common, since contracting the muscle hard during the process can cause short-term fatigue. When timed correctly, though, the benefits are clear. Usyk's ability to slip into deep angles without strain, or to lean far off the center line and fire back, is partly the result of this consistent mobility work. In his style, where positioning is everything, those extra degrees of motion are a real advantage. Breathing-based stretching for relaxation and recovery. Between grueling sparring rounds, Vasiliy Lomachenko sometimes steps away from the noise. He'll lie on the mat in a deep hip opener, eyes closed, breathing slow and controlled. Each inhale lifts the ribcage, each exhale lets him sink deeper into the stretch. For him, this isn't rest, it's an active recovery tool. Breathing-based stretching pairs static holds with deliberate breath control. Inhaling expands the lungs and subtly engages muscles. Exhaling signals the nervous system to relax, allowing the body to release tension. For fighters, it's especially useful late in camp, when physical fatigue and mental stress both run high. Lomachenko's go-to positions include seated forward folds for the hamstrings and lower back, reclining twists for the spine, and deep lunge variations for the hips. Each is held for 30 to 60 seconds, with long, steady breaths guiding the pace. This method doesn't just loosen muscles, it also lowers heart rate and improves focus. Lomachenko often uses it after intense technical work, treating the cool-down as part of his mental preparation for the next session. By the time he stands up, his body feels fluid and his mind clear, a combination that helps him sustain his trademark agility through every stage of camp.